two of you want to live, you come with us now.
Welcome to Decoding TV's coverage of Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 7. Like a Keith in the Night, Patrick Klepek, let's talk about what happened this episode. We're going to spoil it. What did you think of the episode?
I think it's both a really great episode of television in which it features some of John Cena's best acting and simultaneously underscores a through-line problem I have with Peacemaker Season 2, which just we don't spend enough time in the places that I want to be before we go to another place and then wish I was in the other place. So it's, we'll get into what actually happens in the course of this episode, but in the shortest possible terms, where we end up is a frustrating place because we spent all season spinning wheels to get here. Now we're going to do something else. And I find that frustrating. It feels like both somehow Peacemaker Season 2 is too long and too short in different ways. And I don't mean runtime. I have no problem with 30-minute episodes. My problem with Peacemaker Season 2 is not that the episodes themselves are shorter than one might expect for a production like this. It's more about where we're choosing to spend our time. And it's a strange feeling to have because ultimately I really like most of the beats that happen along the way. It's just the attention feels unfocused or could be better spent distributed differently. So it's a strange place to be. It was like, damn, that was a good episode of Peacemaker. While at the same time going, that sort of just underscores a broader issue I've had this whole season. How about yourself?
I love the episode. I thought it was great. I do see where you're coming from, though, which is we have just arrived at this neo-Nazi dimension, and I think you kind of want to understand more about like how this place works and what it says about society. I think the show ultimately isn't super interested in those questions, right? Which is why we spent so little time there, or it didn't have the budget for it, however you want to describe it. But I thought this is a fantastic episode that raises some really interesting questions, in my opinion, in a good way, right? And so I had a great time. And yeah, let's talk about what actually happened. So, beginning of the episode picks up right at. By the way, we should point out that this episode was only like 30 minutes long. James Gunn has said next week's episode will be 59 minutes long. So he's really building to a big crescendo here. This is like one of the big climaxes of the season. So I'm curious, like, how they're going to make.
It feels like a season finale in which the next episode is actually going to be an extended epilogue.
Yeah,
putting pieces in place for Man of Tomorrow, and I think would inevitably some sort of Peacemaker Season 3. So really feels like the season, quote, ended in this episode, and then we're going to kind of deal with the fallout of that in the episode to come.
It could have ended this episode. It could have ended this episode. This would have been a decent place to end the season.
Yes.
But there's going to be another episode. It's going to be an hour long, so I'm really curious what's going to happen. But yeah, we have not seen the next time on preview, or if we have, we're not going to talk about it. So like, we're not going to spoil any of that. But in this episode, Chris and Amelia break out of Argus in rather brutal fashion. And I enjoyed the kind of the cold open where they kill a lot of people in the Argus office. And then from the two Adrians, we learn that the Nazis won World War II. Everything good in this universe is at the expense of those considered outsiders who toil away in camps here in this season. Separately, Judo Master intervenes to save Adebayo, who is running away from all these white people at the end of the last episode. He uses a telephone wire to electrocute people in a pool, and then the two take shelter in a nearby house and bond over their shared minority status. Let's talk about how this show frames the idea of this universe. In our last week's episode, Dan Gavosden had speculated maybe the reason why this universe is the way it is because Chris didn't kill Keith, and then Chris and Keith and Augie became top trio, and they took over the world with their white supremacy. That was a cool theory. Unfortunately, turned out to not be true. This is a plain old run-of-the-mill Man in the High Castle style, the Nazis won World War II situation. And then the Americans became their allies, I guess. And many other aspects of American society are the same, it seems. And I guess my one beef with this, Patrick Klepek, like I love that in an era where Apple TV Plus is taking The Savant off the air, and people are being canceled for what or losing their jobs because of what they have to say about Charlie Kirk. We have a scenario where Warner Brothers is running this show, and it's about how white supremacy is bad, actually, right? And actually, we should be horrified by the white supremacist world. And my one issue with the show is I actually don't think it goes far enough. Like, and what I mean by that is, there are forces on the internet for whom this dimension that we see, Earth X or however you want to call it in this show, is adjacent to what their desired outcome for society actually is, right? A lot of these people hang out on X. There are people out there that actually want to see something like this come to pass. And I think the issue with how this show depicts Earth X is that it doesn't depict that many quote unquote downsides for the white people of Earth X, right? It's basically like, actually, for the white people, everything's great. Like, nothing is actually bad about society other than like culture. Like, but so you don't have a lot of the culture that you'd have with people of color, but like they only like hint at that a little bit with Halloween and Beatles and stuff like that.
You still have laws. You'd have to go get a warrant to go into somebody's house. It's not like, the police completely law. Like, there are still quote, checks and balances, towards, your relationship with authority figures.
So that's my issue, is that like, I see, since X has become a haven for neo-Nazis, I've seen a lot of chatter of like, oh, like society would be so much better if there were no people of color. Like people literally think this. It's extremely upsetting. It's violent, hateful rhetoric, and this what we see in this universe is like, hey, like actually things would be fine if there were, like, we don't actually see the horrors that are being inflicted on people in the show. We got a hint of it last week, but we don't really see it. So that's my one beef, is like, I think James Gunn is coming from the perspective of, hey, it is self-evident that it's horrible that people of color are subjugated and Buddhists and gay people are subjugated in this universe. It is self-evident, and therefore I don't need to make that case. And while I, as a viewer, understand that perspective, I wish it had actually been even more forceful in condemning what it sees as the downsides of this alternate universe. Patrick Klepek, any thoughts on that? I know that's not a good. That's a tough lead-in,
no. I think. I mean, this is the. One. It's when you choose Nazis to be the way you depict evil. That is the quintessential black and white. Like, I know that's not. Yes, they're neo-Nazis, but like, neo-Nazis are like, Nazis sort of a caricature at this point. Like, people pick Nazis because it's just, of course, Nazis are evil. Like, and again, I'm acknowledging all the ways that is like a gray area and mixed, and people aspire to be Nazis in our modern culture. But it's easy if once you describe it as a Nazi, it's very easy, I think, for people who might otherwise see themselves in it, or maybe an error of their ways, or like, well, no, I'm not a Nazi, but like they may hold a lot of prejudicial views that like conveniently align with the ideologies of Nazism. So I think that in and of itself sort of creates a distance that as you're pointing out, the show is not willing to make up the ground on. And I also think this is difficult, where it's like Gunn goes into territory with Peacemaker season 2 that begs him to be more politically active, forceful, not just mindful, but like sort of say what you mean, buddy. There's a lot of reading you can do into Superman that he himself has distanced himself from. Like, when asked specifically, like, hey, really seems like you were speaking to the Palestinian conflict.
Is Superman on the side of the Palestinians?
Whoa, is that no? I was writing that movie way before that. And is that classic, I'm distancing myself from a topic I don't want to get into? Or if you want to be uncharitable, like, am I cherry picking from certain things to make my work feel more politically relevant? I give Gunn more credit than that, but I do think part of not spending more time in this world, depicting what this world in, I think, are convenient ways for the show to not have to go harder in the way that you're talking about, right? Like, okay, fucked up world, time to go. Like, let's go deal with our own injustices. And I'm not saying we got to see the camps necessarily, but I do think by not spending more time in that world, it is not forced. The show itself is not forced to reckon with some of the questions that it opens about what it's saying. And it sort of culminates in, you know, we can get into this because maybe it's not necessarily something we have to do right this second, but like the whole speech we get from Augie, right? Like I feel like Gunn is talking through Augie in that moment in a way. And I think Gunn opens himself to a lot of potential criticism or disappointment in making a show that is going to be politically conscious, speak to the social moment. Okay, well then people are going to really analyze what you say and hold you to a different standard than being a less serious or less.
If Peacemaker was out in the galaxy dealing with if Peacemaker teamed up with the Guardians of the Galaxy or whatever and was fighting aliens, like that would be different.
Season 1 of Peacemaker has a lot to say about modern masculinity and race. Like, it's not as though like season 2 we decided to get serious, like, but it is obvious. I think it is obvious that season 2 is speaking to the moment in a way that was less so in season 1. And so I think that raises folks' expectation about what you're then going to say afterwards. So I don't know that I necessarily see it as disappointing, but I do think it opens the door to things that, okay, like, are you ready to, take the reins on that? And there's a little bit of the way we leave this episode. It's like, well, let's we're done. let's move on. Which I don't think is a cowardly act. I think it's the storytelling driving it, but I have to admit, it leaves me a little disappointed in maybe the way that you are, in which I sort of expected Gunn to go a little harder here. There's something somewhere between where Gunn is at and where the boys ended up. And you know what I mean? Like,
right. Where the boys is extremely explicit about what its political messaging
which is fine. Like, I enjoy, like, subtext is for cowards. Like, I'm fine with that. But it feels like at times I wish the boys universe would like pull back a little bit. And I feel like I need Peacemaker and the boys to kiss. Like, I was like, both of you need to meet somewhere in the middle. And I think that would have been perhaps a little more satisfying. But I don't know is that what Gunn should be doing in his DC universe? Is like, is that the world, what he should be playing? And I don't know, but at least it's interesting.
I think, put it a different way, Peacemaker is not trying to change any minds. It assumes that you will believe that this world is horrible. This alternate dimension is horrible.
It's not crafting an argument.
I think it could have made a case that this world is horrible, right? It could have made a case beyond, hey, we're subjugating a bunch of people of color off screen. It could have made that case in a more forceful way, and I'm a little disappointed that it did not do that.
Well, I mean, it's the best that it does something like that, again, is through sort of like Augie's final speech of like, what does it mean to live in a world of injustices?
Well, okay, I want to get to that.
I think we should pick up what we're talking about, because I think by the time we get to Augie's speech, there's, again, I feel like Gunn is speaking to the audience at that point. It's worth unpacking.
Right. Well, a few other things happened this episode. Augie and Keith kind of realize what's going on, which is that Chris is dead, and there's another version of Amelia here as well. So they go and when police are about to apprehend Amelia and Chris, they intervene, kill a bunch of police officers, and then capture Chris and Amelia. Meanwhile, Rick Flag and Sidney Happerson, the guy from the movie, meet. They're on the set of Superman. Happerson helps them find where the portal is, which is at Adrian's house. And I have to say, it was kind of cool to see the set of Superman like on the show. It's like, hey, we built it looks like they used the actual set.
Gunn has said, I think I'm getting this right, but like, when movies are finished shooting and reshoots are done, like some stuff is maintained for historical purposes or museums, yada yada.
Right.
But a lot of stuff is just destroyed.
Right.
And like there was some of that happening over the course of like shooting these, like, because Peacemaker and Superman were on like sets next to each other.
Yeah.
And it was like, we should save that, because I actually think we might use that. You know what I mean? Like there's a little bit of that going on. So my understanding is this and some future sets that are going to be used in the next episode are lifted straight out of what they were shooting in Superman, which is cool.
which is cool. Yeah, it's very rare to see that. Like, it's very rare. I don't think we've seen really Marvel movies share any sets with.
Well, that's
You
the
know, Marvel
overlap
TV
you in
shows.
theory would like, is like, if we're
Yes.
going to marry this stuff together, it should
Yes.
be, you know, this is not a fair comparison, but, you know, like seeing, you know, Elizabeth Olsen out in the press this week being asked, like, what do you make of like your role in Marvel Zombies? She's like, I don't know. I recorded that 4 years ago. Like, I don't
Right.
remember anything about that show.
Yeah.
Again, unfair comparison for this, but I think it speaks to sort of what we're talking about here is like, wouldn't it be lovely if, you know, WandaVision was being shot while they're also doing, you know, the next Doctor Strange, so that there's like a direct overlap and understanding of like how all this stuff is working, because the sets being used speaks to a timeline production overlap, which is also like a story, like all of that feeds together to hopefully result in something more meaningful and coherent. And, you know, I think it remains to be seen what it means to be a Man of Tomorrow prequel. You know, I don't think we, you know, we'll learn what the full extent of that by next week, but I'm with you that it's more than just like a pointing the finger at the screen. Like, I recognize that it speaks to a narrative coherence that I'm appreciating so far in Gunn's take.
Everyone converges on Keith and Augie's house. It comes out that maybe Augie isn't super sympathetic to the Nazi cause. He gives this big speech that Patrick, you alluded to.
Awfully generous for a Nazi.
Don't call me that.
And right as he's getting to the end of the speech, Vigilante kills Augie. Now, this is really interesting to me, Patrick, right? This is really interesting because what is this speech trying to say? In the speech, Augie essentially says, hey, like, did you protest every injustice in your universe? You know, because everyone just assumes Augie's a piece of shit because he's a piece of shit in their universe. But then he turns it back. He says, like, did you try to stop everything bad happening in your universe? I did the best I could. You know, I'm not a Nazi. I don't support the Nazi regime, but I tried to like put down evil when I could. And that's his whole thing. And I really started to have sympathy for Augie and started to root for him. And then, of course, in classic James Gunn fashion, he completely subverts the moment by having Augie get stabbed to death in the throat. Right then. My initial reaction is like quasi-negative. Here's my reaction to this Augie speech. Is it seems like Gunn is saying that people in many ways are a product of their environment, right? In our universe, Augie was a virulent, racist Nazi or, you know, Klan member style person. But in this universe, he's actually a moderating force and is actually against the extremism of the Nazis and like kind of rebels against it in reaction to his environment. So he's actually literally not as bad in this Earth X, you know, new universe than he is in our universe. And therefore, like that, I think he's saying like people are a reaction to their environment. That's kind of one take I had on what's going on here. Patrick, does that sound plausible to you? Like, what did you make of Augie's speech and what it represents?
I think it's plausible. If you want to read the most like lefty reactionary take to that speech, it's Augie is saying, yes, this world is full of really cruel injustices. We seem to round up anyone other, whatever that definition might entail, into like literal work camps that they spend their entire lives in. But I raised two good boys. Yes, I go to fight the kaijus. Yes, I go to fight, you know, the things I can have, but actually oppose the Nazi regime, put my life on the line? No. I'm unwilling to do that. And he hides behind, oh, do you not fight for your, you know, all the injustices in your world? But his argument is like, I'm raising two fine boys, which I don't know about that. Both boys seem pretty fucked up, honestly. Like maybe they're not like, well, I don't know. Maybe they are. We don't know the other Chris. We don't get to talk to him.
We get hints that he
chases down the sole black person that he sees. So he's
right.
At least so maybe he doesn't love.
Well, Augie's like against that. First of all, he's like, why did you do that? And then secondly, it does seem to me that Augie realizes the flaws of his children. Like he says that the old Chris was out of control.
He's a fuck up. Right.
And on drugs and all these things. So I guess let's just be clear. Like there's the delineation between Keith and Augie. I think there is a difference.
Sure, I agree. Yeah. But he's also profiting deeply off of the line that he is willing to walk up to and not cross. Mm-hmm. And I think it is deeply defensible to say that you cannot wake up every day of your life. And I mean, you could, and I'm obviously, but like for most people, they have a life to live, they have responsibilities, and then they
Yeah.
fit in trying to push back on the things that they believe in and fight for those things in the ways that they can. And that is not a unreasonable way to live one's life. But he makes like a stand on the table defense of like why he's not willing. That's different than saying, and I am unwilling to go further, which is a little bit of the voice that he has in that speech. And then almost it's like Vigilante coming out is like, and centrists are bullshit, and like stabs him to death.
Interesting.
And sort of says like, that's not enough. Like, actually, you do need to go for like Augie. Like, what you say sounds very reasonable. We live in unreasonable times. And if you are not willing to go to the next step, it is maybe not to have a man with knives jump at your neck, but the pressure should be applied upon you to do more. I think that is
interesting.
A possible reading of that situation is using, yes, it's the very humorous gun style approach to surprise violence. But also if you wanted to sort of unpack politically what might be happening there, I think there's a way of reading that is like, yeah, and that's not enough, Augie. And then Vigilante comes in and just stabs the shit out of him.
So Augie is a useless centrist in this formulation.
He's in the bucket of useless centrists, he's probably one of the better ones. In
this universe, at least.
in this universe. But I think there's a way of reading that situation, which is sort of like, yeah, but at some point you do have to cross the line. And because you didn't cross the line, well, now there are camps. You know what I mean? Like, So
interesting. Wow. I totally didn't even have that. Like, I thought the show was framing him out to be very reasonable.
I want to be clear. I don't know that I fully believe that interpretation, but I think there's a way of reading that.
Right.
Because I don't know that I've watched most, if not everything, that Gunn has made and follow a lot of his public comments. I don't know that I would be charitable enough to like read into that. But I do think you can read that.
Sure,
from
you could.
My
interpretation.
I don't believe that's what Gunn. I believe Gunn. That's why I said I think Gunn is speaking through Augie. I think what Augie says lines up much more with what Gunn probably politically believes.
Yes, that's how I feel too. And I think that therefore having him stabbed to death is kind of Gunn's way of being like, aha, I'm subverting the tender moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think it's interesting that it's like in this universe, Augie is the reasonable one, because it does seem to imply that like people can be shaped by their environment, and I don't know what the implications of that. I don't know that I'm a big fan of the implications of that, but like I have more to. Let's see how the next episode plays out, and I probably have more to chew on there. Anyway, a massive firefight ensues with the police. And just as they're about to return to their dimension, Keith busts through the wall and stops Chris. In his defense, everyone attacks Keith, almost killing him. And Chris weeps, realizing that he's the common denominator amongst all the tragedy in his life. Amelia tries to execute Keith, but police attack, and she's pulled into the portal before she's able to finish the job. By the way, I thought that was a really cool moment when she has the gun to his head. She's about to execute him, and she's like, "I'm sorry, I can't have you coming after him." Really great chilling moment. And then, of course, she's not able to finish because they're interrupted, and Vigilante like kicks the door shut. Really cool. Like I think the filmmaking in general this episode is very strong. Anyway, returning back to their universe, Chris explains to Argus that they all came after him and convinced him to bring them the dimensional portal, and Chris is arrested by Argus as the episode comes to a close. So that's what happens. Again, there was a next time on preview. I didn't watch it, but I really have no idea what's going to happen next. Like, how they're going to bring this to a satisfying conclusion this season, given that there's another full 1 hour long episode left. Patrick Klepek, any other thoughts on this episode or what we might see next episode?
Well, my hope is that it's like Chris as a character is in a really good place to like take a pause. Which, like, I was worried that the show was going to end in a too convenient place with Amelia and Chris. Like, we love each other, and we've spoken about how we're flawed, and those flaws make us better together. And I see blah blah blah, and all those beats happen. And by the end of this episode, Harcourt has caught up to Chris, but then by the end of this episode, Chris has regressed into believing he is fundamentally, intrinsically a bad person who is not worthy of love, redemption. And for who this character is, that's an interesting place to leave them. And maybe the next episode will be about resolving that tension. I'm rooting for that. It's an hour of everyone coming to accept that's where Chris is, and that's where we leave sort of Peacemaker before setting up, whatever comes next for the character, whether it's in a, Man of Tomorrow or another season of television. But Chris being this crass, like wanting to be like good person who has been a fuck up his whole life, and the whole nature versus nurture thing, having him firmly believe that he is a bad person, like that's an interesting character. That is an interesting character. And so that's what makes me also fascinated to see what happens over the next hour, to either untangle that, or is it just everybody coming to grips with this is who Chris is now?
I'm just going to put this out there, given what happened this episode and Chris's insistence that, he's not a Nazi. Dad is not a Nazi. Like there's a realization, I think, that like people can be different. People can change, quote unquote change, even though it's a different dimension.
Mm-hmm.
It does feel like that might be part of the message of what's going on here. That I'm going to bet that that's the message of what the season is yes, Chris feels irredeemable right now, but that somehow next episode he's going to find out maybe he is redeemable after all. That's my guess. So let us know what you have thought of the episode and of our predictions at decodingtv@gmail.com. But I thought this is a great episode, like very enjoyable, some great moments, all the carnage at Argus, the shootout was decent, Adebayo and Judo Master sharing a nice moment, and then like the culminating moments with Augie and Keith. Really, really good episode of the show. Probably the best episode of the show, maybe ever, I would say. Those are our thoughts on Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 7. Let us know what you think as well. Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.